Well, thank you for the invitation to join you today. Like Tom Fisher, I come from the design side of the equation rather than the GIS side of the equation, and so I look forward to meeting and talking with many of you over the next few days to learn more about what you do. In my previous role at the University of Florida, I had some opportunities to work with GIS in some capacities, and I want to single out Paul Zwick, who has taught my design classes GIS, and Iris Patton, with whom I worked on a project last spring which involved GIS mapping. So I know enough to be dangerous, I think, maybe just enough. What I'm going to talk to you about today is a bit about how design can build on GIS information, and then the second portion of my talk will focus on the creation of a National Academy of Environmental Design, which, as we described here, includes and incorporates the important role of evidence-based design research in addressing the problems that our globe faces and that Tom spoke about so well earlier this morning. I want to remind you all that visualization is something that human beings have been doing for a very, very long time, and a fairly recent example is this from Leonardo, who in these cases was studying floods on the Po River and proposed flood control methods about 500 years ago. If we had historians with us, we would find many examples of historical evidence of visualization as being an important part of setting the problem that then became solved in various ways. And one might argue that the way we've been visualizing things in our cultures for the last few hundred years has led to some of the challenges that we find today. So at the end of my talk, when I talk about visualization and creating meaning through design-based representations, images, I would argue that that's not sort of eye candy, but that's a really central part of how we understand the world, and that's what many of you do for day-to-day living. I'm going to talk about two projects first, both done by colleagues who I'm working with at the University of Virginia, just to give you a sense of how a designer thinks about using GIS, and then talk about the National Academy. The first is the project Albemarle. Albemarle is the county that the University of Virginia is situated in, and this is a project that's intended to communicate the results of ongoing research to the public and to local stakeholders. It is a website that was created by my colleague Lucia Finney, and as you can see at the bottom of this, she utilized a GIS platform to create a basis for this website. So the website itself is not interactive, but the way it was created was interactive, and I'm just going to go quickly through a few of the pages in this website. So you can see in the website she has used the Macargian, some of the kind of general Macargian systems that can be highlighted to pull out critical features that members of the public would understand, such as the forest cover, the soils that are in Albemarle County, and the urban coverage. So here you see Charlottesville and another small town, Crozet. She has identified the different subbasins, as you can see here, and the quality of streams in those subbasins, how impaired they are, and I don't know where she got this information, but presumably she was working between GIS and other resources that were available at the county level. She identified in a very diagrammatic way the way that the infrastructure works now, where water comes from and where wastewater flows. And again, on the website, all of these are active sites. And the current water supply infrastructure and the proposed 2055 infrastructure. She built this site so that members of the local community could understand how their water worked, where it came from, where it was going, and how they could improve its quality. And so one of the uses of GIS, and I personally, I think it's a very elegant and simple way to understand a local watershed that will be useful for members of the local community as they make the decisions that need to be made. So it doesn't obviously have the complexity, nearly the complexity that GIS has, but it is something that she hopes will be user-friendly. A second example is the Palisades project. This is creating beautiful evidence to facilitate research in cooperation with government agencies, foundations, other institutions, and organizations. The portion in italics is part of the mission statement of, as was the last case, for the National Academy of Environmental Design. And these projects obviously were not done under the umbrella of the National Academy of Environmental Design, but I've selected them to indicate the kind of work that I hope that all of us can do together to advocate for a more sustainable world. And I wanted to also make reference to the man who created the term beautiful evidence, who you may or may not be aware of, Edward Tufte, who's trained as a statistician and graphic designer. He worked at Yale for years, and he's very good and has really made the later part of his career into the creation of evidence that is beautiful and also accurate. And I think that that's where this discipline that you all are co-creating must come together. It must do both. So the Palisades project is still ongoing. The principals are Guy Nordenson and Catherine Sievert and Adam Urinsky at Princeton University, and Guy and Catherine are currently also at the University of Virginia for this year. Their project looks at the Palisades Bay, which includes Lower Manhattan, a portion of New Jersey, and a portion of the other side. Sorry, I'm from New Jersey, so whatever's that other side. And it was done initially with support from the American Institute of Architects. Several years ago, they won the Latrobe Prize, which is a $100,000 research prize. And so this project, in its first phase, and I've grabbed about 6 or 8 snap pages from a 200-page booklet that they've produced. So I'm not by any means doing justice to this, but this has been disseminated through AIA channels. They're currently working with the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and they just co-sponsored a 6-week charrette, invited charrette in New York City, where teams were selected to work based on their research that they'd done. The project has been mentioned in the New York Times and in other places as well. So I selected this both because it's built on a GIS platform, or at least the analysis phase was, and because they have been very strategic about reaching out and building support through the AIA sponsorship with the Museum of Modern Art, which has a constituency that is at a certain level interested in sustainability, but this, I think, will drive the point much more deeply into the consciousness of their membership and others. And as you might be able to guess, it's about hurricanes and how they might hit New York City. I'm not going to go through this, but early on, well, relatively early on, they talk about using GIS to build the analysis model. I happen to have this whole PDF on my jump drive, so if any of you would like it, I'd be happy to share it with you so you can evaluate the credibility of it, because you probably can do that much more thoroughly than I can. But some of these maps should look familiar. This is land cover. This is Manhattan. This is New Jersey, lots of the shipping areas. This is that other part of New York somewhere over there. Land use, elevation data, and then its inverse, water. Looking at slosh. So in a hurricane, and I'm also from Florida, now you know everything about me. We care a lot about tidal surges when there are hurricanes, because even though they don't stay for very long, they can do huge damage. Of course, that's part of the problem with Katrina. The other part was that the water didn't drain, of course. But slosh, you might also imagine, could be a problem that would be similar to sea level rise, except that it doesn't drain out again.